Well, hello, everyone who's here and watching this on Facebook. Thank you for joining us. This is the third episode of the Rainbow Leadership Series. This is Queerstory. You'll find the other two on our website at queerburners.org, and you'll find links on the front page to our previous two sessions. Today is special because we will be joined by Harley Dubois from the Burning Man organization. We'll talk to her in just a few minutes. We are recording and we'll share this broadcast like we have in our other sections and announce when that is out there. I'm going to go ahead and start off with a little presentation that I put together to talk about queer burner history. Just give me one moment here while I navigate that. I've got things popping up on my screen. Give me one moment. All right. And go. All right. So just to start off, I wanted to do a little brief look back onto the history of the queer influence of our community and culture on Burning Man. This conversation actually hardly scratches the surface, as there are a lot of people who have driven and led projects over the years that aren't getting the recognition that they deserve. So I might miss out on a couple of people that have given, have added a lot of value to our organization. There are a lot of people, like Kitten as an example, is someone who has been a camp leader in the community and is a community leader that helped Queer Burners to what it is today. Foxy, No Pants, the late Mario Cisneros, and the late Fathom are among others that have helped build what we are to this point today. Just to mention that Kitten is also heavily engaged with the local indigenous population in the Black Rock Desert, which serves the Burning Man community. Even if not in an official way, he's an ambassador to the community. Come on, there we go. See, this is PowerPoint on Zoom. Come on, baby. Can you guys see anything on the screen, or is it just, are you seeing bubbles?
We're just seeing bubbles.
You're just seeing bubbles, all right? Well, then we'll do it this way. Oh, it helps if I hit the right button. There you go. Burning Man history is a force of its own and there's a detailed information about that on the burningman.org website. The 1986 solstice celebration at Baker Beach migrated in just a few short years to a distant place in the desert. The Black Rock Desert became home to something new in 1990 and continued to grow from there. Thanks to contributions for active and past community members that helped build our queer burner history, we have compiled a detailed record of queer culture building in the Burnerverse on our website. You guys can see the website link there. There we go. 2004 saw the 10 Principles by Larry Harvey revealed. I can't talk all of a sudden. There are ideals that we hold to today as members of our community and bearers of our culture. All right. 1993 is among the earliest influence that I can personally find of our active queer participants in the community that would ultimately influence the road ahead. Specifically, helping to build what would one day be called the Queerhood. These are snippets from our history section on the Queer Burners history page. 1997 was the first organized group of queer camps. 2000, Avalon Village, which lasted much of a decade. Jiffy Lube Uprising in 2001. And some big changes in our relationship with the Burning Man organization in 2016. Placement was asking why the 730 sector was getting so many applications compared to other sectors. Was it that there were more queer camps than they were able to account for? In 2015, the Black Rock City Census revealed information that suggested that about a third of our city was identifying themselves as LGBTQ. The meeting we had with placement was very successful, having finally been able to demonstrate to the Burning Man organization the core importance and existence of the queerhoods, safety. In 2019, the Queerhood was divided with Boz as the new anchor camp in the 430 sector. There were some mixed reviews, but overall it sounded like it had huge potential. The general feedback that I got from the community personally was very positive, and there were some ideas about making 2020 just off the chart, explosive and fantastic. But there is a question that it seems to be existing in the community now if that second Queerhood is sustainable. The 2016 community survey was done by a group of camp and community leaders who were invited to the Burning Man organization to talk about sustainability of the 730 sector and its relationship with queer camps. And it brought data to support the role of the Queerhood. The feedback from the survey we got was stronger than what we imagined. And when the data was reviewed, there was a clear need for queer spaces on the playa. Out of almost 300 participants in the survey, there was a clear voice. Somebody's, yeah, thank you. There was a clear voice about, what was needed in the community. And I'll talk a little bit more about the survey in just a moment. There were a lot of words that are important when we visit that. Sorry, I'm losing my steam there. Sorry about that. There's a lot of words that are important when we talk about our community and our shared spaces. Our Queerhood feels safe to people who seek us out. We work on accountability, even in spaces where people need and want to find a port in the storm. Community and continued culture building, being mindful of those needs of our LGBTQAI participants, will let us freely self-express and radically self-care. There have been a lot of milestones over the years. Having camps present for people who are lesbian or gay or trans or other to have specific and safe space is in such a scary place is ideal. It supports the people who set their intention and participation and opens a window for people who are new, seeking out others like themselves. I will take a moment to tap into a short review of the survey. If you would like to check it out, check out blog.queerburners.org/2016 survey. And I'm gonna bounce over to that real quick here. So we visited the organization, and before we did that, a group of us got together and created this survey. It was led by Cindy V, also known as No Pants. And so you can just taking a quick glance into the different questions. You can see where we got a lot of very helpful information. You know, when we had the raw data and we were able to mess around with it, we were able to see that there were definite concerns about personal safety, especially involving around people that were other gender identities and female, because there's just feeling generally safe in the area. And then I think a lot of people think that, hey, Burning Man is a utopia, you know, it doesn't really go that way, but there are people that just need to have spaces where they feel safe and for them to go now. Are there any questions about the survey, or, because I don't want to make that the focus of our conversation, even though I know I said a lot about it, but I also am using this to kind of say that we're doing the work while we work with our community. Is there any questions I should be aware of, or? Okay. All right. And then I'm just gonna bounce over here real quick. Sorry. All of the things are cutting off my screen, so bear with me. And then I just want to give you guys a quick look at the history page, because we've done a lot of information on here. And a few of us have kind of combined and done some research, and you can see where there's some really cool stuff that's definitely worth a read on here. You know, the Queer Burner history is, we've done a lot over time, and I'm really proud of what Queer Burners has actually brought to the table and trying to create a platform for our LGBTQAI participants to have a space where we can communicate from anywhere around the world. And in 2015, 16, 17, and 18, how we had our first regional style events and how we brought people in from all over the world that participate in that. And it's really cool that we can, help build bridges between each other and our greater burner community, so we can further collaborate and develop together. I'm really happy today that we are been joined by Harley Dubois from the Burning Man project. Let me unshare my screen here. Stop share. There we go. That we have been joined by Harley Dubois from the Burning Man project. Harley, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Been excited for this.
When you and I chatted, I got to say that it really was just so enlightening, and it felt like such a blessing to have a couple of private conversations with you before we got to this point today. And you seem to have a lot of experience and engagement with queer people over the years that have helped contribute to Burning Man.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear some more about that.
Yeah. Well, I love you opening up this conversation and inviting me, because I have been thinking a lot about it. Some of my most impactful, informative moments, like I can remember 1996 to 1997, that year was intense. And in 1996, Sister Kitty came up to me and she's like, okay, great. So you're placing camps. Like I came up with placement. Like that's one of my many contributions to Burning Man, was the whole place, city zoning, placement, all of that was my first thing I gave to Burning Man that I felt I could contribute. And Sister Kitty goes, oh, that's great, you got them placed. But how come people aren't able to know what people are doing in their camps in advance? You should be putting that on the website. And websites were brand new. I hardly knew what a website was. My first list was, it was all so new. And I was like, but that sounds like a really smart idea. And she was right. And so by 1997, that was the first year that when you were a theme camp, you could put up a blurb. And it's directly from the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, kind of getting in my face and being like, okay, that's great. You took one step, but how about the next? Like from, the inception. So you guys have always had such an impact. And yeah.
There's been a lot of changes as far as the perception of the queerhood. And it's, it kind of grits my teeth when I hear people talking about it being a bubble. But I think the queerhood has always been a great channel for people to come and participate and, and be very welcoming. Would you say the same, or what do you think about what the queerhood has brought to Burning Man?
Oh, I think it's awesome. There's a little bit of a story there. And when you and I discussed it, should I tell that story here?
I love stories.
So, back when I started placement, which was 1995, I was really intentional about nobody being in the same place twice, because it was a small community. And we only met, once a year, and it was only a weekend. And if people started like owning their spaces back then, it would have like stifled things. It would have like really slowed down our evolution in terms of like being open to each other and sharing with each other. Because if you knew you're going to stay in this corner, you could put your friend next to you, you wouldn't be open to change. You wouldn't be open to meeting the next guy. So placement was all about mixing it up and keeping it interesting and changing. And it was necessary to keep people's minds open and to have all of everybody's contributions to be valued in the same way. And that philosophy of mine kept going for a long time, and perhaps longer than it was necessary. I gave up placement, I can't remember what year, but by the time the Queerhood started, which was then the Gayborhood, Answer Girl was running placement, and that was the third person to take over placement after I left it, because I actually went on to run the entire city. So I was running everything, and placement was just one small part of it. And Answer Girl had taken over, and she was holding fast to my rules because they made sense, because they were tried and true, and they really served us for a long period of time. But when you guys came in, and I didn't even know you guys were coming in, I heard about it, like I got wind of it like 2 days before it was going to happen. And you guys had a wonderful conversation with her and really made your argument, and ultimately got exactly what you wanted. I reminded her, I was like, remember that we really want people to not own real estate, own anything at Burning Man. It's not about owning, it's about being and sharing and giving. So be wary, remember. And she's like, I know, Harley, you trained me well. And then she came out of it and she's like, we're doing the Queerhood. And I'm like, or the Gayborhood. I'm like, okay, why? And then she explained that that first of all, there's critical mass. Second of all, the city's huge now. Like it's not like it used to be. It wasn't like everyone could kind of know everybody. Now we're in places where there really is I can't say this word, anonymity. I can never say that word. And that means that people can behave poorly. And so you do need safe spaces, and you do need, the city needed to be run differently. And that was exactly what it needed then. And that's a model now. It's not like the Queerhood is like, it's Joe has to have this corner and Frankie has to have that corner. No, you're just all together. So we're still in a microcosm holding to the same principles of let's keep it fresh, let's keep it moving, let's keep our eyes open and our ears open, and love each other and listen to each other and be with each other. But it also creates that safe space, and that's necessary. And I think it's a model for other people with other needs as well.
Yeah, definitely. We've learned, as maybe it's, I see it not only in the queer community, but even like there has to be spaces where that is, I'm going to use the word radically safe for people of a certain gender or a gender identity or a sexual orientation and stuff like that, in order to feel safe in a world that has changed a lot over recent years. So the Queerhood has actually provided that as a really great resource. And when I hear about people that aren't necessarily camping with a queer camp, some coming over to the queerhood just to get a little bit of that air in their lungs, you know what I mean? And that it's very I don't want to use the word enlightening, but it was very I'm happy that it's there. I'm glad that there's that resource. Yeah. So I'm not great. I don't have a lot of questions on my plate for you. Is there any questions that have come up in the queue at this point, or does anybody would like to say anything? Just give that opportunity there. Did you have any other neat stories? What about the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence? Because you did bring them up when we talked before. There's definitely a big presence that was out there with certain people I think we both know.
Yeah, no, they just jumped right in and were immediately a part of like the landscape of people that were out there. From my earliest recollections, I was just looking at photographs from like 1995 on, and there's just a heavy presence. And then a name that you and I both know, J.D. Petrus, who basically camped next to me in 1997 and saw like, so JJ saw how I was camping in this little teeny weeny tent, and I'm running my ass off, and I've got like 2 people supporting me, and I've got 100 theme camps I'm placing. I've got we changed everything that year. There was no driving that year, so people had to get out of their cars and park, and we were actually in brush that year, which meant a whole new set of fire restrictions, and on and on and on. And I was so under-resourced, and JD just looked at that and went, oh, we got to take care of that girl. So she made this big, huge tent and made it available to me to have all of our meetings in. And it was like comfort and no dust and space. Like you can stand up and just breathe fresh air under a tent. Like it was amazing, like how resourced it was. And JD like just sort of hung by me. He actually created the first staff camp. I don't know if people are aware, but when you are working the event, it takes, well, first of all, it's just some numbers. It takes like 16,752 people in shifts to run Burning Man at 80,000 people in the desert, all volunteers. And so once you get that involved, you go to radio and you're like doing shifts and like in that radio life, it's like a whole nother way of doing Burning Man. And oftentimes you're the big bummer in your camp. Like now you're the person who's not paying attention and not doing the dishes and not contributing, but on the radio. So where do you go when you become that person? Well, JD set up that camp for me that showed me how we should have staff camps. And if you're staff, no matter who you are, you can come and camp in a staff camp. And so he basically started that. And I picked that up after him. He made a staff camp for me again in 1998 and provided a tent for me, which was a bigger tent. I had this little thing. He had like 3 rooms for me. It was amazing. I was like, whoa, I could live in luxury of Burning Man. So his contribution was huge in terms of me understanding what people need out there and how to get that done. So the sisters and JD just early on. And then the other name is Greg Taylor. Greg Taylor ran, I started Greeters and Playa Info and Earth Guardians all in 1997, 1998. Like we had a lot going on. And Greg Taylor basically took over Playa Info with another woman. And he ran it with her. And he brought out, you reminded me, it's Mascara Camp. And I think that's the first formal queer camp that was on the playa, and that's 1997, I believe. Mm-hmm. And he ran it. He answered everybody's questions at Burning Man for years, and he has such an amazing contribution. So those are just some early stories of what it was like out there and the contribution from the queer community directly.
I mean, Harley, so this tent that they set you up, did that become Jiffy Lube? Were you the first person in Jiffy Lube?
I was so afraid of Jiffy Lube. I'm still afraid of Jiffy Lube. I was like, JD, I love that you're doing Jiffy Lube, but like, I just don't need to know anymore. I just wasn't my thing. No, actually, my tent got destroyed in 1998. We had a rainstorm after the event, and everything turned to mud, and that tent got destroyed. So no, it wasn't. But I bet you the big, huge canvas one that he made from 1997, that actually was Jiffy Lube. So you're right. I was the first person to shift me loop tents, although I never realized it until now.
Well, congratulations. You're now part of Herstory.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, honestly, we're not getting a lot of questions, but I'm glad that we're able to get together with you and share this across Facebook Live, which we're doing as well.
Scott, we do have
Yes.
we do have a couple of questions.
Oh, let's do it.
Hi, I have two questions. The first one is if it's okay for yourself, Harley, to share. You mentioned that one of the placement rule that you had was making sure that no one is in the same place twice. Can you share other placement rules that you have had?
Yeah, so sure. So that one fell to the wayside because it doesn't make sense anymore. But the other ones are pretty much still in there, and they've added a couple more, but they are, so first of all, you mentioned an application earlier. It's never been an application. It's always been a questionnaire because you're not applying for anything. Basically, we're not judging you. Like if you want to do a theme camp, you can do a theme camp. So it's just, can we fit you really? Is what now we're so big that it is more of an application, but for 25, 28 years, so the bar is set very low because I think that theme camps are the entry level of Burning Man. Like anyone should be able to do it. Everyone should be able. What you have to do is you have to submit your questionnaire on time. That's a rule. Like there's no exceptions. Like if you blew it, then you blew it. Sorry. You have to clean up and when you leave. And if you blow it, then we're not going to place you again because you're not cleaning up. You're not part of this. You're not taking part of being a good citizen of our community. You have to be visually stimulating were my words. Like I'm not going to judge what it is, like, but you have to do something. You don't get placed just to have your tent there. You have to be visually stimulating at some level, and you have to be interactive. And 24/7 is a lot to ask. If you can do 24/7, then you get better placement. And if you can't, then you get not as good placement. So those were the original criteria. And now I know that Answer Girl and Level have added on, you have to be a good neighbor. Like you have to actually be good to other people around you. So the bar is set, it's really high in terms of the way people should be treating each other, but it's very low in terms of like, there's no judgment here. It's all about like, come in and be a good person. And you get placed because you're giving something to the community. And we're not going to judge whether it's good or bad, but you have to be giving something to the community.
Awesome. Thank you, Harley, for sharing that. My second question is, and this may not even be the correct group. I'm just going to ask anyway. I'm wondering, we talked about safety, and I'm just wondering, how do we keep participants safe in general on the playa?
Yeah, there's a lot to that question. There's a lot of levels to it. I guess the first level is, are we successfully empowering each of ourselves and each other to be the good citizens we want ourselves to be? Like, in other words, like here in the default world or in the real world, when something bad happens outside your window, you probably peek out your curtain and call the cops, but you don't get involved necessarily. But in Burning Man, we want people to get involved. And that's a lot to ask of people. There's a lot of programming around personal safety to do that. But Burning Man works best when everybody calls each other on their stuff immediately. So that's kind of the first level. The next level is once you've got to the point where you do have people that are able to behave anonymously, that they're not held accountable, then what are our systems that are in place? Our community is strong. We do have many people who have learned to like be reactive and get in there and get involved right away. And that's our best thing. We have, 1,000 rangers, and rangers are trained specifically for this kind of thing. And when they're brought in, they have no judgment. They like, we have a 007 process where like, there's like a domestic abuse or something that's happened. And now we're following up to make sure that somebody is safe or what the incident that happened, that's bad. They come with no judgment. They have two people who are totally uninvolved, and they both do their own evaluation of everybody that's there. And that evaluation can take anywhere from an hour to 2 days if they're going to do it well. And once they determine that there's a bad actor, then we call in law enforcement, and law enforcement knows that when they're called in by the rangers, it's time to have that person go, and that person's taken off playa. there's so many levels in between that. We have self-activating groups called, I think BED is still around. I forget what the acronym stands for, but it's specifically for sexual abuse. And those are just burners. But they're directly tied into the organization, into our rangers, into our law enforcement as necessary, but they're able to act autonomously as well, which gives a level of like we're not bringing in the cops right away. We're not even bringing in the rangers right away. It's still Burning Man participants, but they are sort of identified and specifically identified for this kind of situation or that kind of situation. So we have many levels that we operate in. It's yeah.
Just to follow up to what you just mentioned, thank you so much for that elaborated answer in response. So how do we make sure that the fire is actually a real fire and not just someone having a really bad day or just broke up with their partner and now they just want to vent? How do we make sure that it's not a cry wolf?
Right. Or like our cancel culture today, like, yeah, and that's part of who we are now, which is a whole nother subject. Yeah, that's the 007 perspective is what we like to bring to it, like two neutral people who are coming in with no judgment. And they're going to just take a fresh look and just say, hey, what's going on? And interview everybody that's engaged. So we take it really, really seriously from the ranger perspective to really evaluate and not make snap judgments or not come in with our own and our own biases, right? Or known or unknown biases. But once somebody also additionally, one really important ranger tenet is they have what they call kicking it sideways. If somebody feels like they're getting too invested and they're starting to have an opinion, but they haven't done the work yet, or they're triggered in some way, then they are asked, they say, well, I need to kick this sideways because I'm no longer able to be unbiased as best one can be. And they'll give it to somebody new and get themselves out of there. So we really try to build in redundancies and cultural norms around saying, it's not, I need to not be here anymore. Somebody else needs to pick this up. So it's just something that culturally is ingrained in who we are, and not weird or difficult or like, I blew it because I couldn't stay unbiased. No, it's fine. Just get someone else in there.
Sorry, Toaster, one last question for Harley and then I'll jump off. Thank you so much, Harley. What kind of advice can you give someone if they feel like everything that they're doing, everyone is in disbelief of them, but it actually happened? Like, what kind of advice can you give that person? Like, should they go seek a ranger? Should they go, speak to the elderly of the camp?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think both of those are great options. I think that you need to look inside yourself and see what's the best thing for you. But if you don't know what that is, absolutely go to the rangers, or even just get yourself to Playa Info. Get yourself to anybody that's really got a radio, because the organization, basically, the people that have radios at Burning Man, they're the people who make a place, and you bring the content. You are Burning Man, right? So somebody with a radio is there to support you in having that experience, having your Burning Man experience. And so they're there to help guide you or get you what you need. So and it might be somebody in your camp is already there that can fulfill that role for you, or it might be that you want a ranger, or it might be that you want somebody. We also have a crisis intervention team these are trained professionals that do this 24/7 in the real world, and they come out there to Burning Man, and when there's a crisis, they come in and they help people, whether it's a mental break, whether it's your friend accidentally, like crisis, like died or something. This team of people come in to support. So we have mental health professionals that are there waiting in the wings. There's so much available at Burning Man. You just kind of have to ask.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Harley.
Thank you. Just to change subjects a little bit, and I know this is a hot button issue. And I don't know how much you can answer, but I think one of the biggest things, and this isn't specifically queer camps, but in general, that people are struggling with right now is the availability of tickets. Now, I know that happens every year. Every year, there's always not enough. And, you know, when the summer gets here, things will start shifting with the landscape. But there are a good amount of tickets that are kind of being held back for different programs. And one of them is for ride use. And then with that, have you guys intentionally left the number of tickets that you're going to sell lower this year just because we're coming back to something new?
So I'm not the perfect person to answer this question. So if anybody, this is being recorded, and if anybody on staff says, oh, Harley blew it on this one, I'm just saying that in advance. Like, it's so complex. Yes, we have definitely put allotments aside, like one is for ride, one is for sustainability. One is for people that have never been before, but like already, and we've never done that before. One is for like represented like other art forms, whether it's different kinds of music or different kinds of art that we just aren't seeing enough of, and people, because they're not already in the system, they can't get access to tickets. And these numbers are getting smaller and smaller and smaller as I describe them, except for this one that I've left off, so which is we've changed the name. It used to be low income, and now I'm forgetting what it is. That's actually increased because we have such price disparities, you know, the 1%ers and all that stuff. So we're actually offering more tickets there. So we have all these different categories, and they're sliced and diced into the theme camp process or the art card process or the art process, and they're mixed into all of that. We have more demand than we've ever had before. And we had promises we made to people in 2019 when 2020 didn't happen, that we have to stay good to those promises, right? So that takes off like a little chunk of tickets there that would normally be available to the general populace. But we promised people with the art projects that we help fund. We gave them the money for their art, even still, because we fundraised for it, but we still have to give them a ticket to get in. So we have art projects they're supposed to be there in 2020 that are coming. And then we have new art projects coming. So it's a really tight, tense year. And there's just no way around it. And of course, people need Burning Man more now than they ever did. And it's just a pressure cooker. All I can say is that I just honestly believe that Burning Man lives under some like little magic star. And if you are the person that really needs to come to Burning Man, you're going to get the ticket. If you believe and you keep trying. So yeah, it's just really tough.
I think it's honestly about setting your intention. I mean, like if you set your intention that you're going to go, you know, if you're like, well, I can't get a ticket, I can't go. Or, you know, I've heard it's too hard. It's not going to happen. You know, that's just a fact. And I subscribe to that 100%. Yeah. Just, I guess one more general question I'd like to throw at you is I know that, well, I've heard the rumor that Burning Man, you know, actually helped behind the scenes a little bit with Renegade Burn to make sure that things ran in a way that wouldn't make us look bad as a community. But I'm wondering, did the Renegade Burn have an influence on Burning Man going forward? Did it like inspire any changes or cultural shifts that that would make us better?
Yes, the Renegade Burn was beautiful. I did not go to it in that. I feel like as an organizer, when I said Burning Man can't happen, I'm not going to go to the Renegade Burn because I feel like that's disingenuous. But that doesn't mean I wasn't there. I didn't stay out there. I went out there in the morning of the first day, and I went out the night of the first day, and I went out the morning of, I think on Wednesday. So I had definitely experienced it. And it was beautiful. And I love the fact that you didn't have to buy a ticket. And I love the fact that it was completely disorganized. And this isn't just me. We all did, like anyone who had an opportunity to experience it. And that's beautiful. And people should just do that. They should just do that. You don't need Burning Man to do the Burning Man thing. Like, what does Burning Man mean? Like, are you talking about Black Rock City? You don't have to go to Black Rock City anymore to get Burning Man. You can go to regional events to get Burning Man. You can go out onto the playa yourself and do Burning Man if you want to. So there was a lot of learning. There was a lot of reminding, because that, when I was there, those 2 times, it reminded me of 1995. It was about the same size. It was more organized than 1995 was, and there was more people with shade and like really had their act together and doing a better job cleaning up because they have more experienced burners. But the feeling was like 1995. So that was beautiful to be reminded of that. And we've had amazing conversations as an organization trying to plan Black Rock City now based on what happened then. But kind of what's happened is we realized, not completely, but in a lot of cases, we grew to where we are now because of what we were then. And Renegade Burn was like what we were then. And we can't do that with 80,000 people. We just can't. So we are definitely trying to learn whatever lessons we can from it and incorporate them where they were. I don't think you'll see any large changes in what we're doing because of it, though.
All right. Thank you for that. You know, it's an interesting shift in the culture and the community. And then, but I think people are so thirsty for, you know, waking dreams, and I'm really looking forward to it myself. I personally am going to come to it differently than I have ever before, because my plan is to come as a tourist for the first time. So I just want to experience it.
I've been trying to be a tourist for years, and I just can't do it. I guess I will say the one thing that's come out of that, out of the Renegade Burn, was that we're really, I think one of the most beautiful things that happened out there is everybody's bar was set so low on expectations that they could just enjoy themselves. They didn't have FOMO. They didn't feel like they're missing out of everything. They could just be with other people. And so I guess the one thing that we are trying to push is like, keep it simple and just come and be and experience, and stop trying to be more and better and faster and bigger. Like, that gets so stressful.
It does. Coming from someone who used to lead a camp for a number of years, I can testify.
Yeah.
Brian, you have a question?
Hi, Harley. Brian Metzler. I'm one of the mayors of Comfort and Joy this year. And I have a question for you regarding paying camp members for work that they do. And I've read the Burning Man guidelines on payment for activities, and the general philosophy that we should not pay people for work done on playa during event, and the ways that has contributed to the, you know, the whatever the pop-up camp thing is that's such a problem.
Plug and play.
Plug and play. But we're struggling as an organization. You know, we're 150 people out there. It's huge organizational challenges and lots of responsibility. And, you know, we're asking people to be responsible for critical life safety infrastructure, food, sanitation, health, you know, camp safety, all these things. And it takes huge amounts of time. And we're struggling with not just how to ask that much volunteer time for people without any remuneration, but also with the more subtle question of, if the only people who can do these leadership roles are the people whose life allows for this spaciousness and economy to give this much without payment, then we by definition exclude a huge portion of people who can't. So that we never get that leadership from those people.
And it becomes a point of privilege, right? Like, you're privileged enough, you can do it.
And I guess I'm wondering what the balance is there. I mean, if you have any thoughts or advice. I mean, Burning Man used to all be volunteer people, and then all of a sudden, you know, I think some of you started getting paid. And now there's however many full-time staff with benefits and all this stuff. And you still have this whole other army of people who I think don't get paid. Can you elucidate any of the philosophy?
Yeah, great question. Great question. If you want to dive into it, you can look at our cultural direction setting that we started was it 2017, which is really informing of the way placement's happening now, and so many things are happening now, and that's where we really took a deep dive into these questions, and not just with like, I was a part of it, yes, Marion Goodell and Larry Harvey before he passed away were a part of it, but it goes all the way down to like, you know, people of color, and people are doing themed camps, and people that are artists, and everybody, like I think it was like over 300 people that were involved in that. So and one of the questions I asked was exactly this. It's like, when do you pay? When is it okay? What Burning Man decommodification doesn't mean no money, and it doesn't mean no commerce. It means you can't commodify. And those are very different things. So what we learned through that conversation we had over the course of 2 years was that it's all about your intention. It's all about, like, if you're paying somebody to be your servant, well, that's not fucking cool, and that's not Burning Man. If you're paying somebody because they need it and they can't come otherwise, and they are a wonderful bartender, and they are going to be sort of in a role that is serving other people, but they're part of your community, and you have to have, like, they couldn't come otherwise, maybe that's okay in your community. That's a very thin line, but maybe that's okay in your community. If you're at a certain point, you can't keep going. You can't give your heart and soul if you can't pay your rent. You have to pay, right? Like, you have to pay. And when that line happens, and you can talk to like Africa Burn. I was with Africa Burn having the same conversation like 10 years ago. They were at the point where they had to pay people because people had to live their lives. They have children they're bringing up. They can't, you know. And so, like, you just have to be really clear about your intentions, and really clear about why the money is being exchanged hands or transacted, and know that it's for the reasons that are appropriate for you, and and that's for you to decide. It just comes down to, like, it's an ethical issue that every line will be slightly different based on what the needs are, and where the people are, and who the people are. And it has to be a really well thought out, articulated, written down criteria when you find it, so that you aren't questioned, and you lose trust with your community. And you have to revisit it all the time, because your community will grow and change, and those needs will grow and change, and that line will grow and change, and you have to be up for that due diligence to stay true. But that line is yours, and it's whatever your community needs.
That's helpful. I wonder if could I ask a follow-up, completely unrelated question, but sort of equally sensitive, if not more so. And it's around substances. And I think everybody is a little bit reticent to talk about substances in Burning Man, and the fact that, you know, there's a fair amount of substance use. We can either agree or not agree, but I think at least most people would agree that that's true. And in our community in particular, we're seeing the return and the rise of a particular substance, GHB, and its presence at our parties and our fundraisers, and people going to the hospital in an ambulance because of it. And we are trying in our world to craft messaging around harm reduction, safety, responsibility, self-care, that is not necessarily specific and liability inducing when we use actual language, but it is such a critical thing, particularly with this substance, because it is so dangerous and so unpredictable, and is on the rise. And I just wonder how Burning Man has navigated that very, I don't know.
And we're, of course, under the scrutiny of the federal government, and they'll look at
Yeah.
anything that, so we've learned a lot. First thing is, you never make recommendations yourself. You point people to the website or the places where other people are making the recommendations, so you don't take on the liability.
Okay.
Like, you're not telling somebody what to do or where the resources are. You're saying you can go here and find the resources you need or the information you need. So you never take on the legal liability yourself. The second thing is that what I've noticed, like I was a city manager for years, so I was looking at the stats of medicals every single solitary morning for, over 10 years. And I've noticed that there's these trends that happen with theme camps. There's a 3-year trend of implosion and a 10-year trend of implosion. But when it comes to drugs at Burning Man, there's a 7-year flow. And new drugs come in and then they start to dissipate, and then another new drug comes in and it starts to dissipate, and it's a 7-year flow. So you might be noticing, you might want to look at the timing, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's different for you, but and you can start to anticipate these things in the future. It's the first I've heard about GHB in particular. But that's just a word to the wise, like you can kind of anticipate that kind of thing. And then I think you're right about like harm reduction. It's getting everybody on board, right? It's just getting everybody enlisted and everybody on board to be of a kind, supportive, educated mind, so that the word is consistent, that gets out there, and that people can be educated and see it around them instead of like not knowing the warning signs, or not seeing it coming, or all of a sudden finding their friend in a situation that they could have anticipated if they were a little bit more educated. It sounds like you're doing it right, and it's just tough.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, I really want to thank Harley for taking the time and joining us today. You can see that some of our questions impact the community as a whole. We'll definitely share this with others out there, and hopefully, other people that have these questions will see these answers and benefit from them. So I really appreciate your time. If you guys out there are appreciative of some of the stuff that we've been doing from Queer Burners, check out our website at queerburners.org. We gladly accept donations. I'll put that out there. But for today, thank you so much. Whoops, hold on. We were just joined by somebody here who wants to
Toaster, it's
talk
me,
about
Ariel.
so give me a second, Ariel. I'll be right with you, okay?
Cool.
So I'm gonna go ahead and give Ariel some room to talk about something that she wanted really important to bring to the table, and then I'll go ahead and say goodbye to everyone. Ariel?
Hi, everybody. It's such an honor to be with you. Sorry for coming so late, but I've been celebrating a very important bat mitzvah, and I run Camp Gender Blender. We are the trans and non-binary camp at Burning Man, and I also wanted to say that I'm one of the co-founders of Queerdome, which is the first ever queer-centered psychedelic harm reduction space. And we hold a space for people who are having challenging psychedelic journeys, and we create a safe space for those people. And I just wanted to say that we're always looking for volunteers. We're always looking for more support to make Queerdome happen. And we're really hoping that we'll be back in the queer neighborhood this year, both Queerdome and Gender Blender. If you want more information about it, I will put my contact information in the chat box. We're always looking for people to help and support us. So I just wanted to add that in. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks for sharing that, Ariel. And the queer, the harm reduction stuff that goes on at Burning Man is very helpful. Matt, if you could, there we go. And it's definitely really nice to have something right in our neighborhood. So I appreciate that very much. Again, thank you, Ariel, for joining us. Thank you very much, Harley. Thank you, Brian, and thank you for the support from Matt, Dow, Ranger Starduster. Thank you guys very much, and I will go ahead and conclude our gathering here today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
I'm so glad. Thank you.